The stars looked different from here. Lieutenant Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window of the USS Harmony and watched the alien sun grow larger. It was orange instead of yellow, and it made everything look strange. 3 days ago, he had been fixing broken radios on Earth. Now he was about to meet aliens for the first time in human history. "Stop staring out the window like a tourist," said Captain Tony Rodriguez as he walked past. "You're supposed to be learning about these cat people, not sightseeing." Jake pulled away from the window and picked up his tablet. The screen showed pictures of the Catalians. They looked like humans, but with cat ears and long tails. Their skin was pale blue or silver, and their eyes were huge and round. The females had longer tails than the males, and some of the tails had fancy patterns on them. "They sure are pretty," Jake said to himself. Dr. Lisa Carter heard him and shook her head. She was the team's alien expert, and she had been studying the Catalians for months. "Pretty or not, you need to be careful around them. These aliens are nothing like us. One wrong word could start a war." Jake laughed. "Come on, Nock. How hard can it be? We're just saying hello and being friendly. That's what humans do best." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Lisa said. She sat down next to Jake and showed him her notes. "Listen carefully. The Catalians are very formal. They have rules for everything. How to sit, how to stand, how to talk, even how to breathe around important people." Jake looked at the long list of rules on her tablet. "This is crazy. Why do they make everything so complicated?" "Because their society is built on respect and ceremony. They've been doing things the same way for thousands of years. And the most important rule is about their tails." "What about their tails?" Lisa's face became very serious. "Never, ever touch a Catalian's tail. Never comment on it. Never even look at it too long. Their tails are sacred to them. It's like commenting on someone's private parts in human culture, but 100 times worse." Jake scratched his head. "But they're right there. How can I not look at them?" "You can look, but you can't stare. And you definitely can't say anything about them. Promise me, Jake. This is important." Okay, I promise. No tail talk. Got it." Ambassador Frank Coleman walked into the room. He was an older man with gray hair and a worried look on his face. "How are our preparations going, Dr. Carter?" "Jake is learning the basics, but I'm concerned. The Catalians are very different from us. They value formality above everything else. One mistake could ruin everything." Frank nodded. "I know it's risky, but we need their technology. Their energy manipulation systems could change everything for humanity. We could travel between stars in days instead of months." Jake looked up from his tablet. "What exactly do these cat people want from us?" "They want to see if we're civilized enough to join their alliance," Frank explained. 6 other alien species have tried to make contact with them. All 6 failed because they couldn't follow Catalian customs properly." "What happened to them?" "The Catalians politely asked them to leave and never come back. No trade, no technology sharing, no communication. They were completely cut off." Lisa added, "The Catalians believe it's species who can't show proper respect, aren't ready for advanced technology. They think giving powerful tools to rude aliens is dangerous." Jake felt nervous for the first time. So no pressure, right? On the other side of space, Zarathik stood in front of a mirror in her private chamber. Her tail moved behind her in slow, nervous waves. The silver tips caught the light and sparkled like stars. She had been chosen to represent her people in this meeting with the humans, and she was terrified. Humans were legendary among the civilized species. They were known for being unpredictable, emotional, and dangerous. Some aliens called them the Mad Ones because they seemed to have no control over their feelings. They laughed too loud, cried too easily, and got angry over nothing. but they were also known for being surprisingly clever. Humans had gone from using simple tools to building starships in just a few thousand years. Other species took millions of years to develop that much. There had to be something special about them. Zarathic's tail twitched with worry. In her culture, tails showed exactly what someone was feeling. Right now, hers was displaying silver and purple patterns that meant nervous but curious. She couldn't hide her emotions the way other aliens could. No Catalian could. Elder Vextailor entered her chamber without knocking. He was ancient, even by Catalian standards, and his tail was pure white with age. "Are you ready, young one?" "I have studied their customs, Elder. I know they are casual with their greetings and speak without thinking first. I am prepared." "Prepared? For anything?" Zarathic's tail curled slightly. "I hope so. Humans are dangerous because they are honest. Most aliens lie to be polite. Humans say exactly what they think. This can be shocking." "I understand, Elder." Vextailor studied her for a long moment. "Your tail shows you are afraid." "That is good. Fear keeps us careful. But remember, these humans want our technology very badly. They will try to charm us with their strange ways. Do not let them fool you." "What if they are not trying to fool us? What if they are simply being themselves?" The old alien's tail flicked with disapproval. "That would be even more dangerous." Back on the USS Harmony, Jake was still reading about Catalian culture when Captain Rodriguez called everyone to the bridge. Through the main window, they could see the Catalian homeworld growing larger. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and silver continents that sparkled in the orange sunlight. "Wow," Jake said without thinking. "Remember, we're representing all of humanity here," Frank told the team. "Be polite, be respectful, and follow Dr. Carter's instructions exactly." Lisa looked pale. "I've never been so nervous in my life. If we mess this up, humanity might never get another chance." "We won't mess up," Jake said confidently. "How hard can it be to be polite for a few hours?" Tony laughed darkly. Famous last words. The ship began its descent toward the planet's surface. Jake watched through the window as strange crystalline cities came into view. Everything looked like it was made of glass and silver. Beautiful spires reached toward the sky, and floating platforms moved between the buildings. "Their technology is incredible," Lisa whispered. "Imagine what we could learn from them." The ship landed in a designated area near the capital city. Through the windows, they could see Catalian officials waiting for them. The aliens stood in perfect formation, their tails held in formal positions that Jake couldn't read. "Okay, everyone," Frank said. "This is it. Remember the rules. Be formal, be respectful, and let me do most of the talking." Jake took a deep breath and checked his uniform one more time. He was about to make history. The first human to shake hands with an alien. Well, assuming they shook hands. Lisa hadn't been clear about that part. As they walked toward the exit, Jake felt excited despite his nerves. This was the adventure he had always dreamed about. Meeting aliens, seeing new worlds, maybe even becoming famous back on Earth. He had no idea that in just a few minutes, 2 simple words would change everything for both their species. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the human delegation stepped onto an alien world for the first time. The air smelled like flowers and metal, and the gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's. Jake looked around in wonder at the crystal buildings and floating vehicles, and then he saw her. Zarafek stood with the other Catalian officials, but she was the most beautiful alien he had ever imagined. Her silver-blue skin seemed to glow in the orange sunlight, and her tail moved behind her like liquid metal dot. It was the most magnificent tail Jake had ever seen. The crystal chamber was the most beautiful room Jake had ever seen. The walls were made of clear blue stone that seemed to glow from inside. Light came through the ceiling in rainbow colors, making everything sparkle like diamonds. Tall pillars held up the roof, and each pillar was carved with strange alien symbols that moved and changed as he watched Ambassador Frank Coleman walked forward slowly, trying to remember all the formal steps Lisa had taught him. The Catalian officials stood in a perfect line, their tails held straight and still. Jake counted 12 of them, all wearing long robes that looked like they were made of liquid silver. Honored ones, Frank began, using the formal greeting Lisa had made him practice 100 times. We come to your beautiful world as friends from Earth. We bring greetings from all humanity. Elder Vex Tail.Her stepped forward. His ancient face was serious, and his white tail moved in slow, careful patterns. Welcome, humans. We have prepared this ceremony to honor your visit. Please follow our customs and show respect for our ways. Jake stood behind Frank, trying to look formal and important. But his eyes kept wandering around the amazing room. The ceiling showed moving pictures of Catalian history. He could see ancient battles, the building of their first cities, and their first trips to the stars. It was like watching a movie made of light. Dr. Lisa Carter nudged him gently. Pay attention, she whispered. This is important. The ceremony began with long speeches in the Catalian language. Jake didn't understand any of it, but it sounded musical and beautiful. The aliens' voices rose and fell like singing, and their tails moved in rhythm with their words. Then Zarathic stepped forward. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Up close, she was even more stunning than he had first thought. Her skin had tiny silver patterns that caught the light, and her eyes were the color of deep ocean water. But it was her tail that truly amazed him. The tail was almost as long as she was tall, and it moved like it was alive. Silver fur covered most of it, but the tip was bright blue that faded to purple and then back to silver. As she spoke, the colors shifted and changed, creating patterns that were hypnotic to watch. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful in his life. Zarathic began to speak in English, her voice soft and musical. We welcome the humans to our world. Your species is known throughout the galaxy for your ... unusual nature. We hope to learn if you are ready for the responsibilities that come with advanced knowledge. Frank nodded respectfully. We are honored by your welcome. We come with open hearts and minds, ready to learn from your wisdom. The formal words continued for what felt like hours. Jake tried to pay attention, but the crystal room was full of distractions. Floating lights danced near the ceiling. The walls showed moving pictures of alien landscapes. Strange music played softly from somewhere he couldn't see. And through it all, Zarathic's tail kept moving in those incredible patterns. Jake found himself studying the way it curled and twisted. The colors flowed like water, creating shapes that almost seemed to mean something. Sometimes it was mostly silver, sometimes more blue. Once it turned completely purple for a few seconds before fading back to its normal colors. He wondered if the colors meant something special. Were they like facial expressions for Catalians? Did different colors show different emotions? Lisa had mentioned that tails were important, but she hadn't explained exactly how they worked. The ceremony moved into its second phase. The Catalians began to show off their technology, making small objects float in the air and creating shapes out of pure light. Frank and Lisa asked polite questions about how it worked, but Jake was too fascinated by Zarathic to follow the technical discussion. She stood gracefully beside the other officials, occasionally adding explanations in her musical voice. Every time she spoke, her tail would move in new patterns. Jake noticed that it curved differently when she was explaining something versus when she was just listening. The colors got brighter when she seemed excited about a topic. It was like watching a living work of art. As the technology demonstration continued, Jake found himself moving slightly to get a better view. Not of the floating objects or light displays, but of that amazing tail. The way it caught the rainbow light from the ceiling was absolutely incredible. The silver parts gleamed like polished metal, while the blue and purple sections seemed to glow with their own inner light. Captain Tony Rodriguez noticed Jake's distraction and frowned at him. Jake quickly tried to look interested in the technical presentation, but his eyes kept drifting back to Zara "THEK" that the ceremony was reaching its climax. Elder Vex Tail.Her raised his hands, and all the Catalians fell silent. Now we invite the humans to share something of their own culture. Show us what makes your species unique. Frank had prepared for this moment. He began to talk about human art, music, and literature. He mentioned Shakespeare and Beethoven, the Mona Lisa and the Great Wall of China. He spoke about human exploration, from the first ocean voyages to their expansion into space. Jake half listened to the familiar speech. His attention was still on Zara, who seemed genuinely interested in what Frank was saying. Her tail had turned mostly blue now, with silver spirals running through it. The pattern was so complex and beautiful that Jake couldn't look away. As Frank finished his presentation, the Catalians began to murmur among themselves in their own language. Jake heard approval in their musical voices. Maybe this first contact was going better than anyone had hoped. The formal ceremony was winding down. Elder Vex Tail.Her spoke again, thanking the humans for their visit and suggesting they move to a smaller room for more private discussions. The other Catalian officials began to file out of the crystal chamber in perfect order. Jake started to follow Frank and Lisa toward the exit, but something made him pause. The rainbow light from the ceiling hit Zarathic's tail at just the right angle, making it shine like a jewel. The silver and blue patterns swirled together in a way that took his breath away. Without thinking, Jake turned toward her with a friendly smile. In his mind, he was just being polite, the way he would compliment a friend's new haircut or a coworker's nice shirt. It was natural human behavior, the kind of casual friendliness that had helped his species survive and thrive for thousands of years. "Nice tail," he said with genuine admiration. The words hung in the air for a moment that seemed to stretch forever. Then everything went wrong at once. Zarathic's eyes went wide with shock. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She swayed on her feet like she had been hit by a physical blow. Her knees buckled, and she started to fall. But before she hit the ground, something incredible happened. Her tail erupted into brilliant blue flame. The fire spread along the entire length of her tail in less than a second. But it wasn't burning her. The flames danced along her fur without causing any harm, creating patterns of light that were both beautiful and terrifying. The blue fire was so bright that it lit up the entire crystal chamber like a beacon dot. Every Catalian in the room froze in place. Their own tails went completely still, the colors draining out of them until they were pale gray with shock. Even ancient Elder Vex Tail.Her stared with his mouth hanging open. Jake stood there with his friendly smile still on his face, completely unaware of what he had just done. He didn't understand why everyone was staring at him like he had just declared war. He didn't know that his innocent compliment had just triggered the most significant event in Catalian history in over 1,000 years. All he knew was that Zarathic's tail was on fire, and somehow he was pretty sure it was his fault. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked quietly. Dr. Lisa Carter's face had gone completely white. She looked like she might faint. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, oh no." The blue flames continued to dance along Zarathic's tail, casting strange shadows on the crystal walls. She had managed to stay on her feet, but she was trembling all over. Her eyes were locked on Jake's face with an expression he couldn't read. In the stunned silence that followed, Jake Morrison realized that his simple, friendly comment had just changed everything. He didn't know how, and he didn't know why, but he could feel it in the air around him. That first contact between humans and Catalians would never be the same. The blue flames on Zarathic's tail burned for 30 seconds before slowly fading away. When they disappeared, her tail fur had changed forever. Where the fire had touched, silver and blue patterns now swirled through her fur like frozen lightning. The markings were beautiful, but they were also permanent. Elder Vex Tail.Her was the first to break the terrible silence. His ancient voice shook with emotion as he spoke in the Catalian language. Jake couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. The old alien was either very angry or very frightened. Maybe both. Other Catalian officials began backing away from the human group. Their tails had turned pale gray, a color that Dr. Lisa Carter recognized from her studies. It meant fear mixed with confusion. Some of the younger Catalians were making soft crying sounds. "What's happening?" Jake asked Lisa quietly. "Why is everyone acting like someone died?" Lisa was reading frantically through her notes on her tablet. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the device. "I don't know. This isn't in any of my research. Catalian tails don't catch fire. It's impossible." Ambassador Frank Coleman tried to take control of the situation. He stepped forward with his hands raised peacefully. "Please, honored ones. We mean no harm." Lieutenant Morrison was simply being friendly. In human culture, compliments are a sign of respect. Elder Vex Tail.Her turned toward Frank with eyes that blazed with fury. "Respect? Your young fool has committed the greatest transgression possible in our society. He has performed the flame calling." "The what?" Frank asked. "A sacred ritual that has not been seen for over 1,000 years. By calling forth the flames of recognition, he has bound himself to Zarathic in the eyes of our gods." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Bound? What does that mean?" Zarathic finally found her voice. She spoke in whispers, still staring at Jake like he was a ghost. "It means we are now considered married by ancient law. The flame calling only happens when two souls recognize each other as perfect matches." "Married?" Jake's voice cracked. "But I just said nice tail? That's not a marriage proposal. In our culture, commenting on someone's tail is the most intimate thing possible," Zarathic explained. "It's like looking into their soul. When the tail responds with flame, it means the gods approve of the match." Dr. Carter finally found what she was looking for in her files. "Oh no. Oh, this is bad. According to this old research, flame calling creates a bond that cannot be broken by any Catalian law. It supersedes all other agreements, including diplomatic immunity." Elder Vex Tail.Her spoke again, his voice like ice. "The human delegation must leave immediately. This ... person has violated our most sacred customs. He has stolen our most precious young diplomat through trickery." "Nobody stole anybody," Jake protested. "I was just being nice." "Nice?" The old alien's tail lashed with anger. "You used Forbidden's emotional manipulation to trigger a response that should only happen between true soul mates. Our people will demand justice." Captain Tony Rodriguez had heard enough. He activated his communication device and started calling for backup from the ship. "This is going south fast. We need to get our people out of here." But as Tony spoke, alarms began ringing throughout the crystal chamber. Red lights flashed from the walls, and the beautiful rainbow ceiling turned dark. Through the windows, they could see Catalian aircraft surrounding their ship. "Too late," Frank said grimly. "We're not going anywhere." More Catalian officials poured into the chamber. These were not the peaceful diplomats from before. They wore military uniforms and carried weapons that glowed with energy. Their tails were black with anger, a color that meant they were ready for violence. The leader of this new group was a female Catalian with scars on her face and arms. Her tail was shorter than the others, probably cut in some ancient battle. When she spoke, her voice was harsh and commanding. "I am General Tail.Her of the Catalian Defense Force. The human delegation is now under arrest for cultural violation and theft of a sacred flame-bearer." Jake felt panic rising in his chest. This is insane. "All I did was give someone a compliment." "All you did," the general said coldly, "was perform a ritual that our holiest priests study for decades to understand. You either did it on purpose, to manipulate our people, or you have powers that no alien should possess." Zarathik stepped between Jake and the angry general. Her new flame patterns glowed softly in the dim light. "Wait, there is another possibility." "Speak, General Tail.Her." "Orgard. What if he really is my soul match? What if the flame calling was real?" The general's scarred face twisted with disgust. "Impossible. He is an alien, a creature with no understanding of our ways. The gods would never choose such a being for one of our finest." "But the flames don't lie," Zarathik said firmly. "In all our history, the flame calling has never been false. If it happened, there must be a reason." Elder Vex Tail.Her hobbled forward, his ancient tail dragging on the floor. "The young one speaks wisdom, but wisdom we do not want to hear. If the flame calling is real, then our laws are clear. The two must be bonded in ceremony within 7 days, or both will die." "Die?" Jake felt dizzy. Nobody mentioned dying. Dr. Carter was reading through more files. "It's true. According to legend, when the flame calling happens, it creates a spiritual connection between two people. If the connection isn't completed through proper ceremony, both individuals waste away and die within days." "That's barbaric," Captain Rodriguez said. "That's tradition," General Tail.Her replied. "But I refuse to believe this alien trickster has truly bonded with our finest diplomat. I demand he be tested." "What kind of test?" Frank asked suspiciously. "The trial of flames. If he truly carries the soul fire, he will be able to call it forth again. If he cannot, we will know he used some alien technology to fake the first calling." Jake looked around the room at all the hostile alien faces. "And if I fail this test, then you will be executed for fraud, and Zarathik will be freed from the false bond," the general said with satisfaction. "And if I pass, then you will undergo the traditional bonding ceremony and become a citizen of our world. You will never be allowed to leave." Jake felt trapped. If he refused the test, they would probably kill him anyway. If he took it and failed, they would definitely kill him. If he somehow passed, he would be stuck on an alien world forever, married to someone he had just met. "This is not how I plan to spend my weekend," he muttered. Zarathik moved closer to him. Her new flame patterns seemed to pulse with soft light. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted this to happen, but the flame calling felt so real. When you spoke, it was like something inside me recognized you." Jake looked into her large, ocean-colored eyes. Despite everything that was happening, he had to admit she was the most beautiful person he had ever seen. And there was something about her that felt familiar, even though they had just met. "Maybe it was real," he said quietly. "I mean, stranger. Things have happened, right?" Dr. Carter overheard him and grabbed his arm. "Jake, you can't be serious. You're talking about giving up your entire life for someone you don't even know." "I know," Jake said, "but look around. We don't have many options here. And maybe this is just the kind of crazy thing that could actually work out." Ambassador Coleman was trying to negotiate with the Catalian officials. "Surely we can find a diplomatic solution, perhaps a cultural exchange program, or a period of study, ... "No," General Tail.Her said firmly. "The law is clear. Trial by flame, bonding ceremony, or execution. Those are the only choices. Elder Vex Tail.Her raised his hand for silence. The trial will take place at sunset in the sacred grove outside the city. If the human can call forth the flame, we will know the gods have truly chosen him. If not, he shrugged his ancient shoulders. How am I supposed to call forth flame? Jake asked. I don't even know what I did the first time. Zarathix smiled sadly. That's what will make it a true test. The flame calling cannot be faked or forced. It comes from the heart, or it doesn't come at all. As the Catalian guards prepared to escort the humans to holding chambers, Jake couldn't help but think about the strange turn his life had taken. 3 days ago, he was fixing radios. Now he was about to take a magical test to prove he was destined to marry an alien princess. Either he was living in the greatest adventure story ever told, or he was about to become the first human to die of supernatural causes on an alien world. Only time would tell which one it would be. The holding chamber was made of the same crystal material as the ceremony hall, but it felt like a prison. Jake sat on a bench that grew from the floor, staring at his hands. In a few hours, he would either prove he was magically connected to an alien he barely knew, or he would die trying. Dr. Lisa Carter paced back and forth, reading through every file she had about Catalian culture. There has to be something we're missing. Some loophole or exception to this flame-calling business. Ambassador Frank Coleman was trying to contact Earth through their communication equipment, but the Catalians had blocked all signals. The brass back home are going to love this. First contact mission ends with our tech guy accidentally marrying an alien princess. Captain Tony Rodriguez stood guard at the door, though it was pointless. Their Catalian guards could probably walk through the crystal walls if they wanted to. Maybe we should focus on getting Jake ready for this test instead of complaining about it. Jake looked up at his friends. How do you get ready to do magic? I don't even believe in magic. You saw Zarathix's tail catch fire, Lisa pointed out. That was definitely magic. Or advanced alien technology that looks like magic. Either way, I have no idea how to make it happen again. The crystal door dissolved, and Zarathix walked in. She was alone, which surprised everyone. Her new flame. Patterns glowed softly in the dim light of the chamber. I convinced the guards to let me speak with you, she said quietly. They think I'm here to prepare you for the trial. Aren't you? Jake asked. Zarathix sat down beside him on the crystal bench. I want to help you understand what really happened today. The flame calling isn't just about magic or ancient rituals. It's about truth. What do you mean? My people evolved the ability to show our emotions through our tails because we cannot lie well. Our faces don't hide feelings the way yours do. When you complimented my tail, you weren't just being polite. You were being completely honest about what you thought. Jake nodded. Yeah, it really was beautiful. Still is, actually. Zarathix's tail patterns brightened at his words. That honesty is what triggered the response. Most aliens who visit us speak in careful, diplomatic language. They never say what they really think. But you did. So the flame calling responds to honesty? More than that. It responds to emotional truth. When you spoke, I felt something I've never experienced before. Like recognition. Like coming home. Dr. Carter looked up from her tablet. That's fascinating from a scientific perspective, but it doesn't help Jake pass the test. Actually, it does, Zarathix said. The trial isn't about forcing magic to happen. It's about being true to yourself. If you try to fake it or force it, nothing will happen. Jake felt a little hope for the first time since the disaster started. So I just need to be honest? You need to be more than honest. You need to be brave enough to speak your real feelings, even when they're complicated. Or scary. Frank sat down across from them. What if Jake's real feeling is that this whole situation is insane, and he wants to go home? Zarathic's tail patterns shifted to darker colors. Then the flame will not come, and he will die. But I don't think that's his real feeling. She looked directly at Jake. What are you really feeling right now? Jake thought about it carefully. Scared, confused, but also excited, I guess. This is the most incredible thing that's ever happened to me. Meeting you, seeing your world, being part of something bigger than just fixing radios on Earth. And what do you feel about me? Jake felt his face getting warm. I think you're amazing. Not just beautiful, which you definitely are, but brave and smart and kind. When you stood between me and that angry general, I knew you were someone special. Zarathic's tail patterns became brighter and more complex. Those feelings are real. Hold on to them during the trial. Tony looked skeptical. So Jake just needs to give her compliments and magic will happen? It's not that simple, Zarathic explained. The flame calling requires both people to be emotionally open at the same time. I have to be ready to receive his truth, and he has. To be ready to share it completely. Lisa finally found something useful in her files. According to this old research, flame calling was originally used by young Catalians to find their life partners. But it became so rare that most people thought it was just a legend. Why did it become rare? Frank asked. Zarathic looked sad. Because my people became too formal, too careful with their emotions. We learned to hide our feelings behind proper behavior. The flame calling can't work when people are afraid to be vulnerable. But Jake isn't Catalian, Tony pointed out. How can he participate in a Catalian ritual? That's what makes this so special, Zarathic said. Humans are naturally good at emotional honesty. You laugh when you're happy, cry when you're sad, get angry when you're frustrated. Most aliens find this embarrassing, but it's actually a gift. Jake stood up and started walking around the small chamber. Okay, so let me understand this. The trial works if I'm completely honest about my feelings. But what if my honest feeling is that I'm terrified of being stuck on an alien planet forever? Then, you tell me that, Zarathic said simply. The flame calling doesn't require you to be happy about the situation. It just requires you to be truthful. Frank had been quiet for a while, thinking hard. There might be another option here. What if we turn this whole thing into an opportunity instead of a disaster? What do you mean? Lisa asked. Think about it. We came here hoping for a trade agreement and some technology sharing. But this flame-calling business has given us something much more valuable. A real connection between our species. Tony frowned. You want Jake to stay here permanently? Not necessarily. But what if we could use this situation to create a new kind of diplomatic relationship? Jake and Zarathic could become cultural ambassadors, helping both species understand each other better. Zarathic's tail patterns became very bright. That could work. Our laws say that flame-bonded pairs must stay together, but they don't specify where. We could travel between both worlds. Jake felt his heart rate increasing. You would do that? Leave your home to help humans and Catalians become friends? If the flame calling is real, then we're meant to be partners in everything. That could include diplomacy and cultural exchange. Dr. Carter was getting excited about the possibilities. This could revolutionize how we approach first contact with other species. Instead of formal treaties, we focus on personal connections. But first, Jake has to pass the trial. Frank reminded everyone. The crystal door dissolved again, and General Keth-Ara entered with 2 guards. Her scarred face was grim. It is time. The sacred grove awaits. As they walked through the crystal city toward the test site, Jake noticed that crowds of Catalians had gathered along the streets. Their tails showed every color imaginable, from curiosity yellow to worry purple. Some looked angry, but others seemed excited. Word of the flame calling has spread throughout the city, Zarathic explained. Many of our young people are hoping it's real. They want to believe that true emotional connection is still possible. No pressure, Jake muttered. The sacred grove was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Tall trees with silver bark and blue leaves created a natural cathedral. Crystals grew from the ground like flowers, and the air itself seemed to glow with soft light. Hundreds of Catalians had gathered. In a circle around a clear space in the center, Elder Vex Tail.Her stood waiting with several other ancient Catalians. Their white tails moved in slow, ceremonial patterns. "Human," the old alien called, "are you ready to prove the truth of your claim?" Jake looked around at all the expectant faces. Then he looked at Zarathik, who stood nearby with hope and fear, warring in her ocean blue eyes. "I'm ready," Jake said, though his voice shook slightly. "Then step into the circle and speak what is in your heart. If the gods find truth in your words, they will send the flame. If not, ... Jake walked into the center of the grove. The crystal ground felt warm under his feet, and the glowing air seemed to hum with energy. He could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching him. This was it. A moment that would determine not just his fate, but possibly the future relationship between humans and Catalians. Jake took a deep breath and looked directly at Zarathik. It was time to find out if human honesty was really as powerful as she believed. Jake stood in the center of the sacred grove, surrounded by hundreds of watching Catalians. The crystal ground beneath his feet pulsed with warm light, and the air around him seemed to vibrate with ancient energy. His heart was beating so fast. He thought everyone could probably hear it. Elder Vex Tail.Her raised his hands for silence. "Let the trial begin. Human, speak what is in your heart. If your words carry true flame, the gods will answer." Jake looked across the circle at Zarathik. Her tail patterns were swirling with nervous colors, and her ocean blue eyes were fixed on his face. She gave him a small nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, Jake began to speak. "I don't know much about your gods or your ancient rituals," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet grove. "Yesterday, I was just a guy who fixed broken equipment. I never thought I'd be standing in a magical forest on an alien world, trying to prove I'm connected to someone I just met." General Cathara scowled. "This is not honesty. This is doubt." "Let him finish," Zarathik said firmly. Jake continued. "But here's what I do know. When I first saw Zarathik, something happened that I can't explain. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she definitely is. It was like recognizing someone I'd been looking for my whole life without knowing it." The Catalians in the crowd began murmuring among themselves. Some of their tails showed interested yellow patterns. When I said nice tail, I wasn't trying to be romantic or magical. I was just being honest. Her tail was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen, and I wanted her to know that. Where I come from, when you see something beautiful, you say so. Jake's voice grew stronger as he spoke. But then something incredible happened. Her tail caught fire, and for a moment, I felt like I could see right into her soul. I saw someone brave and kind and smart. Someone who cares about doing the right thing, even when it's scary. Zarathik's tail patterns began to brighten. "And I realized something," Jake continued. "Maybe this flame-calling thing isn't about magic. Maybe it's about truth. About being brave enough to say what you really feel, even when the whole universe is watching." He stepped closer to Zarathik, ignoring the gasps from the crowd. "So here's my truth. I don't know if we're destined to be together. I don't know if your gods chose us, or if this is all just a cosmic accident. But I know that in one day, you've become the most important person in my life." The air in the grove began to shimmer. "I know that when that general threatened you, I wanted to protect you. When you stood up for me, I felt proud to know you. When you explained your culture to me, I wanted to learn everything about your world." Jake's voice dropped to a whisper, but somehow everyone could still hear him. "And I know that the thought of losing you now, before we even get a chance to see what we could be together, scares me more than dying." The shimmer in the air grew brighter. Zarathic's tail began to glow. "So if your flame calling is real, if it means we're supposed to be partners, then I'm ready for that. Not because some ancient law says so, but because I choose it. I choose you." Zarathic stepped forward, tears streaming down her silver cheeks. "And I choose you too," she whispered Dot the moment their eyes met. Her tail erupted into brilliant blue. Flame once again. But this time, something different happened. The fire spread from her tail into the air between them, creating patterns of light that danced and swirled like living things. Dot. The flames grew brighter and more complex, forming shapes that looked almost like words in a language of pure emotion. Love and hope and joy and fear all mixed together in spirals of blue and silver fire. Then the impossible happened. Jake's hands began to glow with the same blue light. He stared at them in amazement as tiny flames danced across his skin without burning him. "How is this possible?" Dr. Lisa Carter whispered from the edge of the circle. Elder Vex Tyler's ancient voice was filled with wonder. "The flame calling has never been two-sided before. The human carries the soul fire as well." The light from Jake's hands reached out toward Zarathic's flaming tail. When they touched, a pulse of brilliant energy spread through the entire grove. Every crystal in the clearing blazed with light, and the trees themselves seemed to sing. With joy, many of the watching Catalians fell to their knees. Others had tears streaming down their faces. General Kethara stood with her mouth hanging open, all her anger forgotten. Slowly, the flames began to fade. When they were gone, both Jake and Zarathic had new markings. Silver and blue patterns now spiraled up Jake's arms, while Zarathic's tail showed even more intricate designs than before. "It is done," Elder Vex Taylor announced. "The gods have spoken. These two are truly bonded by flame and choice." But Jake wasn't finished. As the crowd began to celebrate, he raised his hand for attention. "Wait," he called out. "I have something else to say." The grove fell silent again. "This flame-calling thing is amazing, and I'm grateful it brought Zarathic and me together. But it shouldn't be the end of the story. It should be the beginning." He looked around at all the Catalian faces. "Your people have created something beautiful here. Your art, your technology, your culture of respect and honor. Humans could learn a lot from you. And we could learn from you," Zarathic added, understanding what he was trying to do. "Your honesty, your willingness to take risks, your ability to find joy in simple things." Ambassador Frank Coleman stepped forward. "What Lieutenant Morrison and Zarathic are suggesting could benefit both our species. Instead of formal trade agreements, we could start with cultural exchange. Families from both worlds could visit each other," Dr. Carter added excitedly. "Students could study on different planets. Artists could share their work across the galaxy." Elder Vex Taylor looked thoughtful. "You propose to turn one flame calling into a bridge between worlds?" "Why not?" Jake asked. "The flame calling proved that different species can connect on a deep level. Maybe that's what the galaxy needs more of. Real connections instead of just political treaties." General Kethara stepped forward. Her scarred face was no longer angry. "I have fought in many wars caused by misunderstanding between species. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach." Over the next several hours, as the twin suns set over the Crystal City, humans and Catalians began planning a new kind of relationship. Instead of just trading technology, they would trade experiences. Young people from both worlds would live as exchange students. Artists and scientists would work together on joint projects. Jake and Zarathic would be the first cultural ambassadors. splitting their time between Earth and the Catalian homeworld. Their flame bond had become a symbol of what was possible when different species chose to trust each other. As the planning continued, Jake found himself sitting with Zara Thick under one of the silver-barked trees. Her tail was curled around his waist, and the flame patterns on both of them glowed softly in the dim light. "Do you think this will really work?" she asked quietly. Jake thought about it seriously. "I don't know. But I think humans and Catalians have something important to offer each other. You could teach us patience and respect. We could teach you spontaneity and emotional honesty. And if problems arise," Jake grinned at her, "then we'll figure them out as we go. That's what humans do best. We're really good at making things up as we go along." Zarathic laughed, a sound like musical bells. "I am beginning to understand why the flame calling chose you. You turn disasters into adventures." "Only the good disasters," Jake replied. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in the UN General Assembly on Earth, with Zarathic beside him. Her tail had new patterns that she'd learned to create by thinking about happy memories. Jake's arm markings had grown more complex too, responding to his emotions the way her tail did. They were presenting the results of the first human-Catalian cultural exchange program. 50 families from each world had participated, and the results were better than anyone had hoped. Human children had learned patience and respect from Catalian families. Catalian youth had discovered the joy of spontaneous laughter and casual friendship from their human hosts. Scientists from both worlds were working together on projects that neither species could have accomplished alone. And throughout the galaxy, other alien species were watching with interest. The Human-Catalian Alliance was becoming a model for how different cultures could work together without losing what made them unique. "It started with 2 words," Jake told the assembled Earth leaders. "Nice tail." Sometimes the smallest gestures can change everything. Zarathic smiled and added, "We learned that connection between species isn't about being the same. It's about being brave enough to be different together." As they finished their presentation, Jake looked out at the audience of humans and the few Catalians who had come to Earth as part of the exchange program. Everyone was working together, learning from each other, building something new and wonderful. He squeezed Zarathic's hand gently, and her tail curled around his wrist in response. Sometimes, Jake thought, the best things in life really did start with the simplest words. And somewhere in the galaxy, other young beings from other worlds were learning that honest compliments, given with an open heart, could indeed change the universe.